All right. Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Trey, and welcome to our monthly Vineyard Focus series. And super excited to have our friend Damon LaLonde, who manages French Creek Vineyard. For us, we're going to dive a little bit into French Creek and what makes that special. You guys, of course, know that vineyard for our Chardonnay. What you may not know is that we actually get a little bit of Grenache out of there as well. And we're going to talk about that. Got some awesome photos of the vineyard. Of course, we've got a map so we can show you guys where it's at. We're going to get into all the geeky details about the soil profile and elevation and all the things that make that vineyard special. But first, I wanted to introduce our friend Damon. Good morning, buddy.
Morning.
Thanks for meeting us on a Saturday morning to get this interview done just in time for our newsletter to go out. I know you're busy, but it'd be fun to talk to you about French Creek. We've worked with this vineyard now. We have worked with this vineyard since 2007 when we started the winery. I actually worked with it in 06 when I was still at Basil Cellars, just for 1 year, and that was when Raj was managing that vineyard. So long history with that vineyard site. But as long as our history is with it, that vineyard is a lot older than when we started working with it. And so we'll dive into that as well. But Damon, why don't you give us a little background on you? How long have you been farming? How'd you get into farming? Did you grow up in Washington? All that good stuff, and just kind of lead us up to where you are today in your world as far as your vineyard management company and all that stuff.
All right, so I'm basically have grown up around the Tri-Cities most of my life. Born in Seattle, but pretty much lived here. Little time in Boise, a little time in Prosser. Only been in the industry since '99, just still a fair amount of time. But
That's a long time. That's a year longer than me.
Yeah, but I didn't grow up in it. What it is, I had an uncle in Napa, and I started drinking wine like around 7, being exposed from him, and I caught the bug pretty much from there on. And
Well, if you were 7 years old, I bet you caught a buzz.
yeah, well, and then I found Hugh Johnson's wine atlas in my parents' liquor cabinet, and that would be like my reading material when I was in 3rd and 4th grade. So it kind of it's kind of been in it, there is inevitable. But I ended up getting the irrigation degree, kind of like Eric did at Walla Walla Community.
Okay.
And from there, I ended up going to Barnard Griffin Winery, and then from there to St. Michel. And
The
after
entire
that,
time working on the vineyard side of things, obviously.
yep, vineyard side. Obviously Barnard Griffin was winery side, and that was a couple years.
Okay.
And then basically got asked to leave to manage vineyards on Red Mountain. So left there and then started my own consulting company at one point. And then one of the partners in that vineyard that I left for chose to buy French Creek.
There we go.
So then we just kind of went from there, and now I'm here today. We got that in 2011.
We've worked with not only we worked with you with French Creek, of course, but there was a 3 or 4 year period where we were using Scootney Flats Vineyard.
Yeah.
And you were managing that project.
Red Heaven.
And Red Heaven.
Yeah.
That's right. On Red Mountain. And you're still farming on Red Mountain, correct?
Yes. So currently I'm in the AVA right now. We have 3.5 acres around our home that we farm. Right down the road is my neighbor's vineyard that I planted, Trey.
Yep.
Both him and I, his about 6 acres. I'm 3.5. All of our fruit goes to Matthews currently right now.
Okay.
And then I've been farming Force Majeure since 2018. So that's all the Red Mountain really that I work with. I used to work with, it was like 8 different vineyards on Red Mountain, different vineyard plots. But now it's just these 3 and then French Creek in the area. And then in 2020, we started Monopole in Milton Freewater. And we farm for the Walls, Pasha, Force Majeure, and a block, part of a vineyard for Valdemar. And the Wall Wine Company, who's has a majority of the acreage probably we farm.
Okay. Yeah, I know that Valdemar and Force Majeure project up the North Fork is, for those of you guys who know our elevation vineyard, the Ziggy Stardust block at elevation, Damon and his crew planted a vineyard another half mile up the road and 500 800 feet higher in elevation than where we are at Elevation Vineyard. A little bit, some of that stuff's over 2,000 feet elevation. So it's that's probably the most exciting vineyard project that's going on right now in the valley, I think. So that's in the Walla Walla Valley, which is very cool. So that's awesome. You've got your fingers in so many things, and I can
Here,
imagine
so,
putting so many miles in your truck, getting back and forth between Red Mountain and
oh
Walla
yeah,
Walla on a weekly basis. But
yeah. I'm gonna have to trade the Jeep in. It's got too many miles on it.
exactly. Well, let's do a little screen share if I can figure out how to do this again. Um, there's a screen share. I'm going to pull up Google Earth. And Damon, can you see that, buddy?
I There we go. Yep, I
There
see
we
it
go.
now.
All right, perfect. All right, so we've got the Walla Walla Valley right here, of course, which is where we are. And there's the Oregon state line. And if you drive through Touchy, through Pasco, get Kennewick, Richland right through here, and then get over to Benton City, you get off the Benton City exit and follow the Yakima River on the north side of the river. And eventually it's going to bring you over here to French Creek. And you can see it's fairly close to Red Mountain, but it's really amazing how different from a climate standpoint French Creek is from Red Mountain. It's definitely a cooler site in regards to heat units. Probably just as dry. I don't know if it's getting that much more rain than Benton City is, Damon. It's got to be in that 60
Yeah,
range.
I think it's more closer to 8. It gets a little bit more that little scabland to the right.
Yep, right there.
The green to the right of that, there's kind of a ridge there.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times there'll be rains that'll settle over here on that side of the ridge,
Gotcha.
and so sometimes we get it. And then Red Mountain, for the most part, it's weird. The systems will come in, and because of all the hills and the air currents, a lot of times the water would kind of just like splits.
So
And a
sort of
lot of people go around
pushed
Red
off to the
Mountain.
east or pushed off to the west and kind of missed the mountain.
Yep,
Yeah.
south and north, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think that's part of the reason I think Red Mountain gets less water too.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. This is if you guys have been if you've driven to Walla Walla and you're on 82, I've always said is the easy way to find uh basically to locate French Creek just visually when you're looking north across the river here, right above the vineyard site is a radio tower. It's right where this arrow is. And you can see that tower from the highway. And if you just look right below that, you can see French Creek. There's a tree line where the homestead is right here. And you can see these trees from the highway, and you can certainly see the vineyard in the background.
Yeah.
And so what's the total acreage planted at French Creek, Damon?
34.
34 acres. The original block was planted in the early 80s, 80, 81, to Chardonnay. And that was a 10-acre block. Now, this is just a little 2-acre scab here, the approximation, but the original 10-acre block is right here. And that was Winty clone. Yeah, the whole thing.
Well, I've never seen the paperwork, but what I think, according to Doug Frost, so yeah, they're in Walla Walla.
Yeah.
But when he tasted John Murray or Martinez at the time wines, they were he said it was Wente. So I mean, there's definitely clusters that look like Wente, but there's also some clusters that look fairly large. But I do know that they replanted the vineyard. Originally, the vineyard had some rogue vines of Gewürztraminer and Riesling.
Nice.
And they
That's how shit
replanted.
was done back in the 80s in Washington, the wine business.
Yeah.
Take whatever you can get.
But the replants came from the old Hinzerling.
Mm,
Chardonnay block. And I'm not sure if they've torn that out or if that's still there. I need to drive back there and look. But
yeah.
that was planted in the 70s, I believe.
Okay.
So, and
And you know the original owner, the guy who planted it, right? Shad?
yeah, he still lives in that house and those trees right there.
He does. Okay. All right. Um, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I'd love to find out, like, why did he plant these 10 acres of Chardonnay? Like, who did he plant that for?
It was going, I've got some early pictures and it was going to St. Michel.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I'm surprised they just didn't, like, back then have him plant the entire thing out, but they're like, yeah, we'll take 10 acres, no problem.
Well,
Uh,
I think they were taking it all at the time. And then I believe Hogue took the fruit for a while.
okay.
Um, but then beyond that, I think I'm not, besides you, I'm not sure how long those people actually got it. I could talk to some of my friends at those companies, and they might be able to give me some. They
Well,
probably have
details
data.
and stuff. Yeah. Well, I can't remember exactly what year Raj bought that property, but it's in that sort of '05 time frame, '05 '06 time frame. And I remember Tom Glaze was the one who told me about it, and only because of Raj's connection to the music business and the fact that he owned London Bridge Studios was I even interested in going to talk to him. I had no interest in working with Chardonnay at all when I was at Basil, but the opportunity to meet Raj and just to have that connection, I'm like, yeah, we'll make a little Chardonnay. So I made one barrel or a few barrels of it when I was at Basil. Um, the funny thing was, I remember the next year because I left the next year, and before the wine got bottled, and I knew we only brought in like a ton and a half of fruit or whatever it was to play around with it. And I remember when the Basil Cellars bottling came out, it was like 700 cases. I'm like, where did they go get all of that Chardonnay? They went and bought a bunch of bulk Chardonnay or something. So, which was tragic because the wine was so good. But with in regards to the Chardier, so that was the original 10 acres, and then right behind the shop here, this little block is Cabernet, and it's sleight of hand. We worked with this for a number of years. It went into our sleight of hand program, and we even did a cool custom project for you, Damon, with French Creek Vineyards as the label.
Yeah.
2 or 3 vintages, I think. 100% Cabernet. What year was that planted? Was that around 90?
It was 10 years later, so 91.
Okay, 91. Which, gosh, there's 32-year-old vines now.
Yeah,
Which,
they don't look much different than the Chardonnay vines from,
yeah,
I
in
mean,
terms of like the
size. Or
size and stuff. Yeah, yeah. Where's that Cabernet going today?
it is now all going to the walls.
Awesome.
And they just submitted barrel samples to Jeb Dunnick that were in the latest report too.
Oh, right on. For a single vineyard, French Creek Cab?
Yep.
Oh, right on. Well, I got to go read that. So
Yeah,
hopefully that do well.
it
And
did.
then, going back, I mentioned we started working with it at '06 at Basil, '07 sleight of hand. And then Raj sold the vineyard after a few years. And what year did you come on? Was that in 9, 10?
We came in 11, and Raj actually still owned that east half. John
I,
owned all the Chardonnay, and then it was a pasture below, basically above those trees and below your block.
I gotcha.
And we instantly planted that year all that to Chardonnay clones.
That's the new Chardonnay right here next to the house and below the original block. And by the way, folks, as we're looking at this, let me see if I can, there we go. You guys see that you can see this canyon that runs right behind the vineyard. This canyon is one of the reasons French Creek has 40-year-old Chardonnay vines because it's not like it's a high elevation site. It's around, I think, 750 to 900, something like that.
It's 860. That block is 860 to 900.
Okay. So it's not, that's 860 is where our winery is. And that's our winery in Walla Walla. It's one of the coolest sites in the valley right there. However, you've got this canyon to the east, and then you've got this just drop off straight down to the river to the south. And so whenever we have these, and not to mention you've got the ridge back here, and so all this cold air drainage, cold air is always looking for the lowest spot. So there's plenty of places for that cold air to kind of drain off, which is why we haven't seen any like just super terrible freezes that's killed off the vineyards right there.
Well, and through this area of the valley, kind of like on Red Mountain, once you're usually over 700 feet, it's when you don't see wind machines too often, because most of that cold air will settle around the 700 to lower.
Right. Okay. Interesting.
So
yeah, that is a good point.
Put a wind machine in here.
There really aren't a lot of wind machines out there. I never really thought about that, Damon.
Yeah, if it is, it's mainly because of the cherries.
Okay.
Yeah, if you see,
you've got what's the orchard? There's an apple orchard right to the west of French Creek.
It's right next to your block is pears.
Pears, okay.
And below that is cherries.
Okay, so cherries here, pears
but
here.
There is some apples out there too. I'm not sure. And they planted more cherries. And then in your picture there, that clean area
right here,
all that Old-Vine Chardonnay was that they tore out.
That's right. That's right. Was that stuff going to Lacole, or who was getting that stuff?
Lacole, I think Erica Orr was getting some of it. Okay. My friend Eric made a wine from Merriman down in Willamette Valley.
Okay.
There, and I think there was some other small guys too.
Okay. Well, this right here is the new block of Chardonnay, and I know you guys planted 4 or 5 different clones of Chard in there, and that fruit goes to a number of different wineries still today, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It's the funny thing about almost all the Chardonnay, besides maybe, I want to say I'd have to look at the list, maybe 2 or 3. It's all predominantly wall wineries to get big Chardonnay. Okay.
And then above the Old-Vine Cab, you guys planted out some Rhone varietals, some more Bordeaux varietals as well.
Yeah. So right below and to the right of your blue bubble there, balloon, that's 2 clones of Cabernet. Then it goes into Grenache. Mm-hmm. And then the bottom right-hand corner is the head train Grenache.
Right. Yeah.
And then it goes as you go north. Yeah, Syrah, some Rhone whites, Mourvedre. Then your Grenache block.
Yeah, that's the red block right there. Is our Grenache block.
And then there's Grenache Blanc and another block of Grenache. And then we've done some grafting, and so we've got more Grenache, more Pique Pole. We put in a little Touriga, and there's some Roussanne in there. And then
that's cool.
Yeah, we got 2 rows of Merlot that are probably going to go out, and then we're going to plant another Rhone white. Okay.
And this is French Creek, by the way, folks, is a estate vineyard for the Walls winery. Mike Martin, the owner of the Walls, is one of the partners in French Creek Vineyard, and they utilize this fruit for a lot of their own stuff, as well as selling it to clients like myself and a few others. So well, let's dive into this Old-Vine Chardonnay real quick, Damon. One of the things that's interesting about our block that we noticed early on when we started farming it with you, when we were working with the fruit, probably 2 or 3 years in a row working with the fruit, we noticed some canopy differences from the top of the block, because again, this slopes from the north to the south, the top of the block to the southern part of the block. And we noticed that this corner right here was, the canopies were much bigger as the growing season went on, and the clusters got bigger as well. And I think that we determined that it's probably getting sub-irrigated from the orchard next door. And I remember kind of walking the first probably 7 to 10 rows and making that determinate cut of where is it probably being sub-irrigated, everything below this. And then what did you guys do? Put in cutoff valves or something to that effect?
A lot of times we just turn them off at the very top of the row.
At the top.
yeah, it's amazing how much water it gets, and you can kind of see the contour lines on your map a little bit, and you can kind of tell that there's it's like this a little heavier soil, and then you've got the basalt there, then it's subbing through there and going running right down through there. But that in that younger Chardonnay, my most vigorous is probably down there, and that where that little piece right there is.
Yeah, I see what you're talking about. I know that we made those cutoff decisions to try to even out the block. But what's interesting on the winemaking standpoint, I don't know if we're the first pick out of your vineyard every year, but I'm sure we're certainly one of the first picks of Chardonnay out of French Creek almost every year, and we're trying to capture that site for acid retention and capturing more of the tree fruit components rather than the tropical fruit components from a ripeness standpoint. And it used to be that I always said between September 1st and 10th is our normal picking dates out of French Creek in a warm year. We've picked it as early as August, though. I remember probably 2 or 3 years in the past 10 or 15, we've definitely picked into August to try to, again, capture that. But in our block, our 2-acre block, we actually will do 2 separate picks. The eastern edge, and I say the eastern edge of our block, but really the middle of the block, seems to ripen a little quicker than the western side. And again, this for me goes back to, I think, the sub-irrigation. I think there's just a little more water coming into these vines right through here. And so we'll end up picking 1 acre, and then usually 5 to 7 days later, we come back in and pick the second pick. And the numbers are typically spot on, almost very close to each other. So having that extra week of hang time gets that western side caught up to where the eastern side is. Do you know, Damon, the further east you go in this block, do you feel it's the same thing? Is it the eastern edge over here ripen a little faster?
Definitely in the canopies, depending on, I kind of have to push those canopies a little more too to get a larger canopy.
Right.
Yeah, and then as you get to the top of the block across everything, it's definitely a lot rockier across the top of that block. There's more fractured basalt. You'll find a little bit more, sometimes some granite in that kind of thrown in there too.
Right.
So, but yeah, no, it's always the clusters. It's are always a little smaller, and it's just So most of that's why I'm on winemakers sometimes, make sure they don't let it go too far.
Yeah. Phone call. Hey man, just wanted reminding you. Thankfully, you don't have to remind us that often. So, well, stylistically, when we do these 2 picks, I'll tell you from a winemaking standpoint. And by the way, Keith would have joined us, but he's in Montana, enjoying some fly fishing and just some relaxation, I hope. So, but from a winemaking standpoint, we really haven't changed what we do with this block from the very beginning. We will typically whole cluster press our Chardonnay into stainless steel and sort of get the wine homogenized and get it going. So it's all native ferments, of course. So we want those to come up to temp a little bit. Once fermentation starts going, we immediately put the juice in neutral French oak. Sometimes we use concrete. We've played with concrete in the past. We've occasionally brought in a new barrel or two, but for the most part, this is low impact from an oak standpoint for the Chard. And the reason we do that is because there's really not a lot of Old-Vine Chardonnay left in Washington. Most of this stuff from the 70s and 80s has been replanted and pulled up and planted with newer, sexier clones, or the vines are sort of, they've got to the point where they need to be replaced and or maybe it's different varietal or whatever. But when you get the chance to work with Old-Vine Chardonnay, we want you to taste Old-Vine Chardonnay. We want you to be able to get a sense of what that vineyard is like. And so rather than making a big modern style and throwing it at a bunch of new oak, which kind of masks some of those characteristics of the vineyard, we would go in just a little more of a naked approach, you know. It's a little more transparent, I guess. And so, and then going back to, you know, we're picking earlier, we're looking for those brighter acids. Once fermentation is complete, and it usually takes about a month, because we do a fairly cold ferment in our barrel room. We are stirring the lees every few days just to make sure everything stays up in suspension. Once it goes dry, we start checking for malic by taste. And when the acid profile feels right for us, we'll typically stop malic. Just by make sure we get some SO2 in there and keep the temperatures at 55 degrees. And it stays in barrel until bottling. And we bottle this wine in July every year. And so what we'll do is we'll rack the wine out of barrel off of the heavy lees. We will filter this wine because it does have malic acid still left. So we do a filtration pass, and then we get that wine to bottle. And it's really, really a beautiful version of Chardonnay. Damon, you've tasted, I don't even know how many different Chardonnays from this vineyard site. I mean, with the new block down below and all the folks that have worked with the old block. Stylistically, how do you feel like we fit in with some of the other winemakers that you work with?
I mean, the reality, you know, everyone kind of makes a different wine. But I do know Valdemar's going to a more stylistic approach as you are, picking earlier. Some people, you know, let it get a little bit riper. Some let it really hang. You know, I had one client that was actually using it to fatten up some Sauv Blanc. And so, but on the other hand, we sell to Karma, and they make 3 different wines. They make the Blanc de Blanc, sparkling wine, and then they make an American oak Chardonnay and a French oak Chardonnay.
Okay.
Those obviously very different styles there, but it's fun to go taste the wines for the sparkling because you realize how much flavor that it has at such low bricks.
Right.
You just got to make wine from it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the challenge, was getting used to, you know, I think as a winemaker, and this is, I guess I'm talking personally, you know, stylistically, what I thought was ripe as a number, you know, was much higher back in the 2000s, in the early 2000s than where I'm comfortable with today. And I think that just comes with experience. But yeah, we've become super, you know, 22 to 23 is that magic number. 22, 22 and a half, really, from a brick standpoint. You're going to get pHs in that 3-5 range, still really fresh acidity. Yeah, I love how this wine shows. And I feel like as we've gotten to know the vineyard together, our wines have become better. And so I think back to our first vintage of doing all native in 2011. And by the way, that we need to drink a bottle of 2011 here soon. That cold vintage, that wine is just remarkable.
Yeah, I drank my last one a couple of years ago.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And it was delicious.
Yeah, we have some, we've got a little library of wine, so we'll have to bust one out next time you're hanging out with us. So, outside of Chardonnay, when you guys planted, when you get to that extensive planting over here, you planted a fairly small block of Grenache, and this is like 0.3 something acres. Is that right?
Yeah, 0.3. I'd look at chart like 0.31, 0.33.
Yeah. And this is a head train block right here, and you can see it's planted off north-south. It's really planted like, it looks like it's probably like 15 degrees off north-south, maybe.
Yeah, it's just the slope. You know, we just kind of followed the slope. Really, is what was going on.
Right, right. There's a good example of it right there, into this little canyon down here. I've got some photos of this block right there. Did that pop up? Can you see that?
I don't see anything.
All right, let's try that again. see here. I'm going to stop it, and then I'm going to screen share one more time and pull up a different one. And is it going to let me do that? No, I guess not. Well, we'll put them in. I'll have Daniel intersperse this in, but I've got some nice photos of that block, the head train block, which we really like. So that Grenache we worked with. What year did you plant that stuff out?
That was, I have to look. Most of it we did in 12, some was in 13. I always forget exactly which blocks went in 13.
Yeah.
Um,
So we probably been working with that block since 15 or 16 then.
yeah, I don't know if I got it on a spreadsheet or not. Well, I should have it, but
Yeah.
it's been a while.
Yeah. You know, Grenache is a finicky grape. It's something that definitely takes a little time to come around. They're definitely like unruly children. You probably know that more than anybody that you're growing them. But I know from a winemaking standpoint, they're a little erratic. The first 4 or 5 years, it feels like, you know, it's like from not from a quality standpoint even, but just like what you're actually getting from the vineyard every year. It's sort of, you know, you never know really what you're going to get every year. Now I feel like we're in that stage where the last 2 years at least, everything feels dialed in, and not only the level of quality going up a little bit, but our understanding of that block has definitely gone up. You know, we do quite a bit of whole cluster with that, a lot of foot crushing, and yeah, that wine ends up in the Sorceress Grenache every year, and we really love it. I know you've got more Grenache planted, head trained for a rosé program for the walls.
Actually, it goes to a winery over in Woodinville.
Oh, right on. Okay.
Yeah, the other block of Grenache is split.
The head train.
Grosgrain gets a little bit of one of the blocks, but then the Walls Rosé is basically predominantly all French Creek from and we grow it for rosé, so we hang a little bit higher crop, and then they blend in a little bit of Mourvedre from the site too.
Okay, awesome, awesome.
But
very cool. Let me see.
that other head train block is a little different than yours. It seems to be quite different year to year. But that's also where the old barn was. There was just a bunch of junk there. So there's all kinds of weird stuff on underground. You know, who knows what's buried there or something.
I only want to know what Raj was doing in that barn up there. So what is, real quick, we didn't talk about the soil series up there. So Warden Silt Loam and Prosser Silt Loam.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea the difference between Warden Silt Loam and Prosser Silt Loam? We should have gotten Kevin Pogo here.
Yeah, well, and I don't think there's not too much. It has to do with I think
is it like a flood series, like a different flood series or something, or?
I believe that has more to do with it. You know, I should even know more about it. You know, what I do know.
By the way, this vineyard, this vineyard was just absolutely affected by the Missoula floods. I mean, 700 to 900 feet elevation, this thing was underwater. And another photo that I'll have Daniel throw up here when he edits this, but I've got a great picture of, it's either a piece of Montana or Canada, this huge granite erratic that floated down on an iceberg during the Missoula floods and got stuck right here at Shad's, the original owner of the vineyard, original guy who planted it. Right there where his house is next to the vineyard, he has this huge cow pasture. And, you know, there's a 5-ton, I don't know how much that thing weighs, but it's a huge boulder, granite boulder sitting in the middle of his field. And that thing floated all the way down from.
It was actually in the, I was going to say, it was actually in the Cabernet block, and they pulled it out, drug it into that field.
No, are you serious?
Yeah. That's what I've been told.
They should have left it there and planted around it. That would have been so cool.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that the Olsen brothers, they used to have it on their label when they were doing their wines. Across that canyon, there is one that they've left, and it's about as big as that one above ground and could be twice as big below ground.
Underneath. Wow.
Yeah, it's huge. It's probably one of the largest that I know of
Oh,
around.
that's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, those floods were catastrophic to say the least, just rolling right through the middle of Columbia Valley and scouring away anything that was on top of on top of the land, probably right back down to the bare basalt, and then whatever came in behind it, windblown loess and volcanic ash and all that stuff.
You know that the little canyon, the break between the two Syrah blocks. If you notice there, when you drive by there, you'll notice that the color of the soil kind of looks different.
Okay.
And the vines are a little weaker right there. There was I think without having it exactly tested, I think that was there was a deposit through that canyon because basically we cut and filled. And I believe it was the old St. Helens. There's ash. I think that's why.
Cool. Big ash,
really
ash pocket.
Talky in there. It's really kind of weird. The soil
Do
through there.
you think it could be Mount Mazama? You think it could be the Crater Lake?
No, I don't think it is that one. I mean, there's because there's even over in when you drive between like the Blackwood side over to the canyons, there's a cut through there in a spot, and that's actually the St. Helens layer.
Okay.
Not, from what I know.
Awesome.
So yeah, there was an older, it's not the recent one, not the 80s. This was years ago.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, that'd be cool. I mean, it's Eastern Washington, man, all the volcanic activity and the floods, and it's seen its share of destruction for sure. So, but out of that destruction, we get to create all this stuff. So it's cool.
And we talked about, what is it's about looking at the numbers, it's 2/3 Warden, like you mentioned.
Yep.
I think one of the things I think people should probably understand to a certain degree is that, and I've learned part of this when I was at St. Michel, is most of the best Cabernet that comes from Washington is grown in Warden soils. If you look at some of the best cabs around that you've had, most likely if you look at where the fruit came from, it's predominantly Warden. So it's kind of, Warden is good stuff.
So. Yeah, no doubt. I did not know that. So yeah, I'll have to quiz Kevin Pogue about that sometime. He'd be fun to have on here. Matter of fact, I've got may even do that. We've got 1 month of this year because we're doing this vineyard focus series. Eventually I run out of vineyards. So I think maybe I'll fill up that last month and have Kevin on, and we can geek out about soil and stuff. So but well, I think we covered it all, Damon. What do we not talk about? We got it. We got our blocks, we got our soil, we got what makes that vineyard special, got your history.
Too bad the pictures didn't pop up, but you'll have them in there.
What's that?
You'll have pictures in the final, so that'll
we'll have photos. I'll have Daniel intersperse this thing with pics and stuff for everybody to see. So that is a picture of the Old-Vine Chardonnay behind me right there from that was a while ago too. I checked that on my phone. So we just ripped out. So one of the interesting things we'll talk about this. There, as those vines age, some of them get diseases and stuff. And in our old block, we've got vines that what do they have again? Eutypa. And what ends up happening is your shoots, end up being like this long, and the clusters, if they even get clusters, or these tiny little BB-sized berries and stuff. And so a couple of last year, Damon started ripping out. Basically, they went and marked all the plants that are showing signs of it, and ripped out with the root zone as much intact as they could all of these old vines, and then replanted with cuttings of more Winty clone Chardonnay to get it back into production. But we brought one of the vines back home to either put in Sandy and Jerry's house or to put in the winery. We haven't figured out where it's going to go yet, but it's at the winery currently. It actually looks very, very cool. And again, so like preserving Washington grape growing history, So if you guys are looking, if you want an old vine, reach out to me. I'll put you in touch with Damon, and it'll be like a you pick. Come and pick it up.
Yeah, there's a pile of them. They
There's
look pretty cool. I will agree. I'm trying to figure out where to put one in my place.
Yeah, for sure. All right, buddy. Hey, that was awesome, man. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're busy today, and
Thank you.
maybe drive down to Walla, I'll come by our pool because that's where we're going to be. It's going to be hot today.
Yeah, no, I need to. It's this next couple of weeks sound like a good time to do that.
It's going to be good. Yeah, some good growing weather. Vintage looking like it's great so far. I don't know if you're seeing the same thing, but we're pretty excited.
Yeah, I'm liking what I'm seeing so far. Yep. The Grenache has been a little weird this year, though. I don't
Our
know.
Syrah's been weird. The Syrah's been. I've got a lot of Syrah clusters or a lot of Syrah shoots without fruit. But that's the only varietal I've noticed. It's this really wacky. So I thought the French Creek Grenache looked great when I was out there last week.
Yeah, well, and I think part of it's because I saw more of the weirdness in the cordon trained. Of course, there's a lot more buds too, and I think it was just affected differently. But yeah, I know that the head trains they look good.
It looks really good. So awesome. Well, I'll see you out in the vineyards here next week, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And folks, thanks again for joining us. I hope you enjoyed another vineyard series. We'll join us next month. Gosh, what are we doing next month? I think we're doing Evergreen. Actually, we're going to talk about some Riesling up there. That's going to be pretty fun. All right, awesome. Well, guys, thanks. Have a great day, and we'll talk to y'all soon.